the quiet observer. The sun was just beginning to rise when Adrian Bennett entered the towering glass doors of Bennett Dynamics, a company that bore his name but rarely his presence. Dressed in a plain navy blue janitor's uniform, he pushed a well-worn cleaning cart into the elevator, pressed the button for the 12th floor, and leaned back against the metallic walls as the elevator hummed upward. To the world, Adrian Bennett was a reclusive but shrewd CEO who had built an empire on the values of innovation, hard work, and integrity. To his employees, he was little more than a name on a plaque, a figure rarely seen in the halls of the company he had founded. That was exactly how Adrian wanted it, at least for now. For the past 6 months, Adrian had taken on the guise of a janitor to observe the company culture at its most unfiltered. It was a drastic move, but Adrian believed leadership wasn't about issuing commands from an isolated office. It was about understanding people at every level of the organization. He wanted to see how his employees treated each other, especially those they considered invisible. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and Adrian pushed his cart into the bustling 12th floor hallway. This was the operations hub, where the heart of the company pulsed with activity. Employees moved briskly, clutching coffee cups and murmuring greetings. Few spared a glance for the man in the janitor's uniform. Adrian preferred it that way. It allowed him to blend in, to observe without the filter of his title. Today, however, his focus was on one individual, Derek Hargrove, the senior operations manager. Derek had a reputation in the company. On paper, he was efficient, organized, and results-driven. But whispers of his abrasive attitude and condescending behavior had reached Adrian's ears through anonymous employee surveys. As Adrian quietly cleaned the glass walls of the conference rooms, he kept a careful eye on Derek, who strode through the office with an air of self-importance. "Emily," Derek barked at a young woman sitting at her desk near the window. "Where's the monthly performance report? It should have been on my desk an hour ago." "I'm working on it, sir," Emily replied nervously, her fingers flying over her keyboard. "I just need another 15 minutes. 15 minutes? Derek scoffed, leaning over her desk with an exaggerated sigh. "Do you understand what deadline means, or do I need to spell it out for you?" Emily's cheeks flushed red as her co-workers averted their eyes. Derek straightened up and turned on his heel, muttering under his breath as he walked away. Adrian tightened his grip on the handle of his mop. It wasn't the first time he had witnessed Derek belittling employees, but it never got easier to watch. The morning progressed, and Adrian continued his silent work, taking mental notes of Derek's interactions. At one point, Derek nearly collided with Adrian in the hallway. "Watch where you're going," Derek snapped, not even bothering to look up. "And clean up that corner by the break room. It's a mess." "Of course, sir," Adrian replied evenly, suppressing the urge to say more. As Adrian mopped the floor near the break room, he overheard a group of employees discussing Derek. "Did you hear how he chewed out Emily this morning?" one of them whispered. "It's like he enjoys making people feel small." "I know," another replied. "But what can we do? He's the boss, and HR doesn't seem to care." Adrian frowned. The culture of fear and helplessness that Derek had cultivated was a dark contrast to the values Adrian had tried to instill in his company. He decided it was time to dig deeper. During lunch, Adrian sat in the corner of the break room, pretending to eat his packed sandwich while listening to the conversations around him. Derek entered the room, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. Conversations hushed, and employees avoided his gaze. "Why is this coffee machine always broken?" Derek complained loudly, jabbing at the buttons. "Can't you janitors do anything right?" Adrian stood and approached him. "I'll take a look at it, sir," he said, his voice calm. Derek sneered. "About time. Do your job properly for once." Adrian bit back a reply and began inspecting the coffee machine, though he already knew it was working fine. He had checked it earlier that morning. Derek's outburst wasn't about the machine. It was about asserting his dominance. As the day wore on, Adrian continued to witness Derek's toxic behavior. He interrupted meetings to criticize employees in front of their peers, dismissed ideas that weren't his own, and even made snide remarks about the cleaning staff. By the end of the day, Adrian was exhausted, not from the physical labor, but from the emotional toll of seeing his employees endure such treatment. He pushed his cleaning cart back to the janitor's closet and sat down on a small stool, his mind racing. Derek's behavior wasn't just a problem, it was a symptom of a deeper issue. Somewhere along the way, the company's values had been overshadowed by the pursuit of results at any cost. Adrian knew he had to take action, but he also knew that change wouldn't come easily. The next morning, Adrian arrived at the office even earlier than usual. The building was still quiet, bathed in the soft glow of pre-dawn light. Adrian preferred this time. It gave him space to reflect on the day ahead, without the cacophony of office life bearing down on him. He took a moment to adjust his janitor's uniform, tightening the straps of his cleaning cart as he mentally prepared for another day of observation. Today, Adrian wasn't just looking to observe. He was determined to dig deeper into the culture that had allowed someone like Derek Hargrove to thrive. His approach wasn't just about rooting out one toxic leader. It was about addressing the systemic cracks that had let this toxicity fester unnoticed. He knew there were more layers to uncover. By the time the office buzzed to life, Adrian was already stationed near the employee lounge, scrubbing a set of scuffed tiles. He chose this spot deliberately. It was a crossroads of sorts, a place where employees felt safe enough to chat without the prying eyes of managers. Sure enough, as the morning wore on, small groups of employees began to gather near the coffee machine. Their conversations were light at first, weekend plans, favorite TV shows, but it didn't take long for the topic to shift to office grievances. "Did you see the email Derek sent last night?" one woman whispered, her voice tinged with frustration. "He practically rewrote my entire report and then took credit for it in the meeting this morning." "Classic Derek," another replied, rolling his eyes. "He's been doing that for years, and if you try to call him out on it, he'll just make your life miserable." "Yeah," the first woman said, lowering her voice even further. "I heard he got Olivia reassigned last year because she refused to stay late for one of his urgent projects." Adrian kept his head down, pretending to scrub a particularly stubborn stain. His mind, however, was racing. It was becoming increasingly clear that Derek's behavior wasn't limited to occasional outbursts. It was a calculated pattern of intimidation and manipulation. I will continue with the next part of the story to ensure it reaches your word count and fulfills your request. As the day progressed, Adrian made his way to different parts of the office, each area revealing its own slice of the company's culture. In the sales department, he overheard a junior associate venting to a colleague about how Derek had publicly berated her during a team call. "I didn't even do anything wrong," she said, her voice shaking. "He just needed someone to blame because the numbers were down." Her colleague nodded sympathetically. "He's like that with everyone. It's easier to just keep your head down and stay out of his way." Adrian clenched his jaw as he wiped down a nearby window. It pained him to see his employees, people he had hired with the hope of fostering creativity and collaboration, reduced to walking on eggshells. By mid-afternoon, Adrian decided to visit the tech support department, a quieter corner of the office often overlooked by the rest of the company. The tech team was small but crucial, handling everything from software troubleshooting to system upgrades. As Adrian entered the room, he noticed a young man hunched over his desk, his fingers flying across his keyboard. The man barely glanced up as Adrian began emptying the trash bins. "Hey, Noah," another tech support member called from across the room. "Did Derek get back to you about the server issue?" Noah sighed heavily, leaning back in his chair. "Yeah, he did. Told me it was my fault the server went down, even though it was his decision to delay the upgrade." "Classic," the other replied, shaking his head. "I swear that guy wouldn't last a day doing our jobs, but he acts like he knows everything." These interactions painted a clearer picture of the challenges Adrian faced. Derek's ego-driven decisions, his unwillingness to take responsibility for mistakes, and his tendency to shift blame onto others were emblematic of a larger cultural problem. Adrian realized that addressing this would require more than just firing one toxic manager. It would require a fundamental shift in how the company operated. As the day wound down, Adrian returned to the janitor's closet to put away his supplies. He was about to close the door when he heard hurried footsteps approaching. Turning, he saw Emily, the young woman Derek had berated earlier, standing in the hallway, clutching a stack of papers. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. "I just wanted to thank you for being kind. Most people don't even acknowledge the janitors, but you've been really polite." Adrian smiled warmly. "It's no trouble at all. Kindness doesn't cost anything." Emily hesitated, as if weighing whether to say more. Finally, she added, "I know it's not my place, but you've probably noticed how people like Derek treat the staff. It's not just the janitors, it's everyone. It's like he thinks he's better than the rest of us." Adrian nodded, his expression serious. "I've noticed," he said, "and I'm sorry you've had to deal with that." Emily gave a small, grateful smile. "I don't know if it makes a difference, but thank you for listening. Sometimes it feels like no one cares." Adrian watched as Emily walked away, her shoulders slightly less tense than before. Her words stayed with him long after she was gone. He realized that his disguise wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about understanding the human cost of the company's toxic culture. The turning point came during an all-company meeting. Adrian had been gathering evidence for months, and he decided it was time to confront the toxic culture publicly. Standing at the back of the room, mop in hand, he listened as Derek berated yet another team for a missed deadline. The room was silent, the employees too afraid to speak up. Finally, Adrian stepped forward. "That's enough," he said, his voice calm but commanding. All eyes turned toward him, confusion and surprise evident on their faces. "Who do you think you are?" Derek demanded, his tone dripping with disdain. Adrian straightened, pulling out his ID badge and holding it up for everyone to see. "I'm Adrian Bennett," he said simply. The room fell silent. Derek's face turned pale as the realization sank in. "I've been watching," Adrian continued, his voice steady, "and what I've seen isn't leadership, it's bullying. That ends today." Adrian then addressed the room as a whole, apologizing for the culture he had allowed to fester in his absence. He promised immediate changes, starting with Derek's removal and a comprehensive review of the company's leadership practices. The employees erupted into applause, a wave of relief and hope sweeping through the room. In the weeks that followed, Adrian worked tirelessly to rebuild the company from the ground up. He implemented leadership training programs, created anonymous feedback channels, and launched cross-departmental collaboration initiatives to break down silos. Most importantly, he made himself accessible to employees, walking the halls regularly and ensuring that his leadership team did the same. By the time the first signs of cultural transformation began to appear, Adrian knew the journey was far from over. Change would take time, but he was committed to seeing it through. For the first time in years, Bennett Dynamics felt alive with possibility, a place where innovation, respect, and collaboration could truly thrive. Adrian Bennett had started as a quiet observer, but now he was leading the charge for a brighter future.